Hey everybody, what's good? We're going to be taking a look at this video from Middle Nation or the Middle Nation channel. I know they have a podcast and everything, but I wanted to take a look at who Middle Nation is as an organization. So we can take a look, because I think what this video is doing is dissecting some of the approaches to life the West has to offer. So let's take a look and see if we can find out who Middle Nation is. And it says here, Middle Nation is a title given by God about Muslims in the Quran, and it considers it a reason for their superiority over the nations and regarded its goal to be Muslims witnessing upon other nations. So if you don't freak out about the fact that these are Muslims, Muslims hold themselves to a different standard, just the same way that like proper Christians hold themselves to a different standard. There's rules that you live by. There's certain expectations. I find that they're a little more driven, and I'm talking about both Muslims and Christians, but like good Christians. You have Christians, and then you have the people who actually go to church all the time. They try to do the right thing type of thing. So there is a difference. It's a spectrum, what people like to say these days. Anyway, going back to this, join Shahid Bolson, the leading political commentator on global Muslim affairs, as he analyzes events from across the world. So though this guy is Muslim, think of him like maybe a Ben Shapiro or even a Candace Owens, someone with very strict religious beliefs. There's a lot happening, so let's see if this guy is going to be able to set us on the right path. So I'm going to stay working on this kid's book while we watch this video. If you remember, please go to coconutjustice.com and get yourself some clothes that I think you would look good in. Let's get into it.
Well, I think that probably the difference between my critique and maybe the critique of others who criticize the West is that I don't really differentiate between colonization and imperialism and racism and white supremacy, feudalism, neo-capitalism, and so on. I don't differentiate these things from each other, and I don't differentiate these things from the culture and the character of the West itself. All of these things are manifestations of Western character. That's what drives these policies and these practices and these ideas.
Okay.
They're
So
all just
basically what he's saying is there's no difference between everything that us people of color are bring up, or you can say complain about. There's no difference in the approach. It's the same approach. White supremacy, imperialism, kind of the same thing. It's all for the advancement of white folks. I mean, let's be real. That's what he's saying. Okay.
For instance, the same colonizer mentality is actually applied across every arena in the West. The mentality of exploitation of others' resources and the dehumanization and subjugation of those whose resources they are, while feeling completely entitled. You see this across every sector in the West. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about...
You can't argue with him. Those are true. We go around, and I'm going to bring it to you from a completely different aspect too, or a completely different angle. You're probably going to think that I'm talking about oil resources, and you're talking about food resources, land resources, all of this mining that's happening to the planet to make batteries and stuff. So there's an argument against both. If you continue to get all of the oil out of the ground, we're going to poison the water and the air. If you take out all of the minerals, what are we going to do when all the minerals are gone? But I'm not going to get into it from that angle. I'm going to get into it from, say, a studio angle. What he's saying is you have studio heads who don't do anything and they are taking advantage of the creative people. Taking advantage because what they do, what they did to me and thousands of other people, we, as a creative, sure, we want to work on really cool projects and for Disney and DreamWorks and all these big studios. And then when you get there, you find out the 40-day work week doesn't exist. You know, like not for anything, but when I was in the studio system working for these big projects, I was putting in 80, 90, 100-hour work weeks. So they were extracting the resources from me, but only paying me for 40 hours a week. And a lot of times, what was happening was the developers or the designers always have to make up for project managers who, quite honestly, might have been in over their head. But again, there's that separation between the people that are actually doing the work and then the project managers that there's sometimes project managers, you know what you do. You're on a phone call with the client, and then you, instead of pushing back, you say, oh, yeah, of course we can do that. And all of a sudden now my weekend is full of work because you're terrible at your job. Extracting resources is more than just oil, minerals, trees, food, all that stuff. We have to, if we're going to have grown up conversations, let's have grown up conversations. Extracting the resources to make a different level in the corporate structure be successful. Meanwhile, all we ever do is get laid off. Okay, let's go.
Minerals or precious metals or gems or crops or what have you. Or if you're talking about labor, or if you're talking about talent and creativity.
There you go.
These are all natural resources.
There you
And it
go.
doesn't matter if you're talking about these resources being in another country or being in your own country. The point is they're not your resources.
Right.
And you exploit and pillage and profit from them.
There you go.
And you marginalize and subordinate the actual owners of the resources.
Yeah.
So I mean, look at America. Whatever unique cultural contribution that's come from America, it's come from the poor, from the underclass, from African Americans, from poor whites, from immigrants, and so on.
Let's expand on that idea too. Think about how many times there is an app developer or a studio or just any corporation at all, and there's a small person, you know, maybe Steve Jobs or Bill Gates in a garage and they're building something, right? Well, actually, that might be a bad one, but let's go with it. Let's say someone like a Steve Jobs, or a small group of friends that do something. Maybe they write a movie or they're working on a cartoon, and then they come out on YouTube and they start showing it. There's a larger corporation that'll come down and buy it all up. This happens in the music industry where you might be a band that gets signed by a big record label, but the only reason that they signed that group was to put them on the shelf because they already had another group that was very similar to that original group that we were talking about, and they don't want the second group to interfere with the potential that the studio first signed their first group. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I know I'm talking weird, but an idea will get bought and put away just in order to continue to milk or benefit from the money coming in from this other band.
Side of the coin be to jazz, rap, and hip hop, and so on. And then on the other side of the coin, bluegrass, country music, rockabilly, rock and roll, and so on. All of these things came from the poor, from the working class.
Right.
And from John Steinbeck to James Baldwin, your best writers all emerged from poverty and deprivation.
Yeah.
Historically, the same goes for most of your acclaimed athletes, your entertainers, and your performers. And
Yeah,
then your style and fashion.
that's a fact too. But actually, now with sports, you're starting to see a lot of um, second and third generation. You're starting to see a lot of second and third generation athletes. LeBron just had his son. They just made history. They were the first father son duo to play in an NBA game together. Now, not for anything, but LeBron James's son, Bronny, he's trash. Not a lot of people understand why he made it into the NBA. But, nepotism is a real thing. So if you don't have money, like LeBron, when LeBron was coming up, LeBron had to actually work really hard. And he had to prove himself in the NBA, and he did. But the son didn't have to work so hard. And I think what this gentleman is trying to say is when you're poor, you have this drive to be successful. But the people with money don't necessarily need to have the same drive. They don't need to work nearly as hard. And so I think that's what this guy is trying to explain.
Poverty and deprivation. Historically, the same goes for most of your acclaimed athletes, your entertainers, and your performers. And then your style and fashion and slang and everything. Creativity has always come from the poor.
Yeah,
The rich mine the resources of their talent
there you go.
the same way that they would mine copper or lithium or gold and then profit
100%.
from it,
Look at the
enrich
studio.
themselves and claim it and act like it's part of their own greatness.
Yeah.
You claim these talents and creativity as American, but the people themselves, whose talent and creativity it was, were all people from a people whom America abused and treated like nothing. They came from people who your society and your system treats as if they have nothing to contribute.
That is so true. Listen to me when I tell you. It doesn't matter all of your accomplishments. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter that you've never been in jail. It doesn't matter how many books you've read. It doesn't matter how many groups you've started. It doesn't matter how many dunks you've made, how many three-pointers you've made. If you don't have money, the rich people don't care. You're just kind of like cute for them to say, oh, look at that, right? This guy, like it or not, this guy is dropping some truth bombs.
Their contributions are the only things that gave you any kind of culture at all. They don't represent America. They overcame what America did to them.
Preach.
And even still, more often than not, they died penniless. This is a colonizer mindset. You know, record producers, agents, lawyers, publishers, what have you.
All of them.
These groups of talentless leeches who feel entitled to get rich off of the creative resources of others.
Right.
They're exactly the same as colonizers who feel entitled to get rich off of the raw minerals and the natural resources in, say, Africa or Asia, the Middle East, Latin America, and so on. It's the same mindset.
Yep.
You yourself offer nothing. You contribute nothing. You create nothing. You just exploit and use and devour. It's parasitic.
Yeah.
It's the feudal system,
I don't
just manifesting in
disagree
various
at
ways.
all.
And this runs throughout the whole so-called
Disagree
civilization.
at all.
You can even see it manifesting on an individual basis. I mean, to one degree or another, individuals of a society or of a civilization are just fractals of that society, of that civilization, which is why you find so many Westerners who are mediocre, materialistic, greedy, entitled narcissists. And they even approach interpersonal relationships with a colonizer,
And
feudalistic,
lazy.
self-supremacist mentality.
And lazy as shit.
Main character syndrome, they call it. This may be where your whole so-called crisis of masculinity comes from, to be honest. Because none of these attributes of your so-called civilization are masculine traits. But that's another topic for another day. The point is,
So so kind of what he's saying, like let's peel back the curtain. What he's saying is if you are parasitic, if you are someone who takes advantage of the poor, if you are someone who doesn't bring much to the table except possibly a check, and not for anything, but there's a lot of you guys that Either you tricked your way into money or your parents gave you money, a nice little head start, right? What he's saying is you're basically a bitch. Those are bitch ass moves. Taking advantage of people is not being a leader. Only taking and then putting your name on something, right? So like for example, again, going back to the studios, there's a lot of people that write wonderful stories and they sell them to these studios. Stories meaning whether it's an actual story or like a script or anything like that, right? They get sold to a studio and then that studio gets all of the acclaims and all of the and some writers will get some notoriety from it. They might get some work from it, but for the most part, who wrote Who Framed Roger Rabbit? You don't know. Who wrote Everything Everywhere All at Once? You don't know, but you do know the studio. And that's just the game. And this dude, he's just pointing out the fact that if you're a leech and you don't bring anything to the table, you're just a bitch.
Drives all of it. The point is, the same thing drives all of it. Drives colonization, drives racism, drives white
Right,
supremacy, drives
right,
feudalism,
right.
drives neoliberal capitalism,
Because not for
drives
anything, but white
neocon
folks have
warmongering,
the
drives
majority of
union
the money
busting,
here, at least here
drives
in the States.
exploitation of artists, on and on and on.
Right.
It's the fundamental character flaw of the West.
You exploit artists, you exploit inventors, you exploit photographers. I think our vision of leaders has been so warped. Back before colonization happened and everything, you had a tribe leader and they made sure that everyone was good because a strong tribe means everyone is successful, everyone eats. And I'm not saying like being into socialism and communism and all that shit. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying capitalism needs to have proper leadership. All of this stuff that I win, I win, I win, you lose. That's not how it works. That's not how it's supposed to work. That's how it's working today, but that's not how it's supposed to work. The United States is supposed to set up all of its citizens for success.
Built their whole so-called civilization on the foundation of that flaw. It's the misassignment of value, or in a word, materialism. The idea that having and controlling resources is, in and of itself, success and superiority, and by extension, having and controlling other people's resources is admirable and is to be justified by whatever rationale is most effective. I said narcissism for a reason, because this is different from egomania. Someone can have a big ego but not be a narcissist. A
Okay.
narcissist knows deep down that they're not special, and their self-obsession and their vanity is just a camouflage for actually feeling a low self-worth. They're mostly mediocrities. And what's a mediocrity?
Yeah.
It's a person who's lacking the natural resource of creativity and talent.
So
So you
basically,
could
what he's
say that
saying
they are
here.
resource narcissists because they are naturally.
So basically, what he's saying here is, and I'm almost positive you guys have seen it. There's someone who is not nearly as talented or doesn't have as much as the other person in this made up argument. But the person that doesn't have as much talent but might have a little bit extra money than the other person, they're going to badmouth that other person. Again, I've been in situations where project managers made me look bad, but it's their deficiencies that I had to make up for.
Is just a camouflage for actually feeling a low self-worth. They're mostly mediocrities. And what's a mediocrity? It's a person who's lacking the natural resource of creativity and talent.
Right.
So you could say that they are resource narcissists because they are naturally resource poor. They want to be resource rich, meaning that they want the resources of those who actually have them. Again, whether this means raw minerals, labor, talent, ideas, what have you. They want what they don't naturally have,
Yeah.
and they want to be perceived as having that more than anyone else. So again, because in reality they want what they don't deserve. They have to project upon the resource rich that they are undeserving. So stealing from them is justified because it just means that you're righting the cosmic wrong of them ever having had the resources in the first place, because obviously everything should just belong to me. We're essentially oppressed because our oppressors are mediocrities, and they can only feel special by subjugating those who are special. Wallahi, the story of the West and the global South is basically the story of Cain and Abel writ large.
That last comment was pretty deep, actually, if you think about it. So the story of Cain and Abel was God came to the Garden of Eden. Cain and Abel were preparing for a nice dinner. Cain was a gardener, so he had a bunch of beautiful vegetables and all kinds of stuff. Abel was a shepherd, and he was supposed to make a lamb, I believe. And God showed up for dinner and was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And Cain says, "Oh, look at this beautiful salad I made for you." And God was like, "Yeah, that's cool, but where's this lamb?" That's where the jealousy came for Cain, was that he had all of these wonderful vegetables and stuff, but God was looking forward to the barbecue. And then that escalated, and Abel was killed by Cain because Cain was jealous, and then they all did not live happily ever after. You know, that last comment was pretty crazy. I think our approach has been crooked just a little too long, and I think that's one of the benefits of social media is the people. It kind of evens out everything for for everyone. It's a democratization of information, and it's a democratization of influence. And everything is way more affordable now, so it's a little more approachable. And so, we got to be out here telling our stories and showing our talents and standing up for ourselves. People take advantage of the people that don't have. I know I've bumped into that for so many times. Do this cartoon for me, and then people stiff you, and it's just like, for some reason we have this view of our leaders that the smart ones are the ones that take advantage, instead of actually investing in the leaders that are here to build us up as a country. I'm an American through and through, but I do think that we need to invest and build up our population to stay competitive. I've been saying this more and more lately, where in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of imported workers that are doing all of the work, building apps and building technology that's defining tomorrow. But our people aren't ready for those jobs. And it's terrible to see. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with each and every one of your friends. And if you want to come hang out with me while we watch videos and I work on creative projects, please hit that subscribe button. And there's a little bell button right next to it. If you hit that, every time I release something, you'll be alerted. Don't forget to go to coconutjustice.com to get yourself some cool t-shirts and hats and stuff. And with that,